Welcome back to another episode of Heads and Tails, and today is a big one for me because in this episode we're joined by one of the leading research figures in education in this country, the doyen of well-being and character, the incomparable Dr. Katy Granville-Chapman. Katy, I'm going to read out a short bio here, and perhaps you could tell me afterwards what I missed. So, Katy is an Associate Fellow of the Oxford Character Project, which is a research body which is central to Oppen's work. She's a doctoral teaching fellow in Oxford too, as well as a research fellow of Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre. She's been shortlisted for the Business Book Awards on Leadership Books for the Future, and is also the co-founder of Global Social Leaders, a movement of young people in over 100 countries who design social action projects that make meaningful change in their communities. Almost there, Katy is a former British Army officer and holds a DPhil from the University of Oxford, which focused on leadership and flourishing. She is also a deputy head teacher at Wellington College. We got that, Katy. Welcome to Heads and Tails.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here, Walter.
Fab. It's a real joy. So first up, you know about Oppen a bit. We are big on mentorship. We think all children should have mentors. Take me back to the beginning of your career. Were there any mentors who stood out in terms of supporting you?
Oh, yeah. In the army, it was just the most supportive environment, and everybody really, really wanted the best for each other and kind of appreciated that it was quite challenging as well. So just so many brilliant, brilliant mentors in the army. I think there was just such a culture of mentorship and just really helping to lift each other up. So real privilege.
We're going to come to your time in the army in a second, but take me back a bit. An anecdote perhaps from your time at school.
Oh, school was great. Had such a lovely time. It was, for me, really, really dominated by an absolute obsession with trying to get to the Olympics. So before school every morning, I'd start at a swimming pool at 5:15. And we'd do some land work and then swim for about 3 hours. And then I'd go to school after that and do like gymnastics or something at lunchtime and then train again in the evening. So I was quite drowsy at school, which was brilliant. I think that was great for my teachers because before I started swimming, that amount, I found it quite hard to be well behaved, I would say. But I think my levels of discipline and compliance improved hugely with that amount of exercise.
I have no doubt that the seeds of your character research started in the swimming pool at school.
Yeah, I should think so. Again, wonderful, wonderful people. It's always been people who've made a big difference. My swimming coach and the synchronized swimming coaches that I work with were real inspirations. And I think because it was genuinely tough, it gives you confidence. I think whenever you do something that is difficult, then other things become a bit easier. And I think it is quite translatable. So I think it gives you a bit of resilience and confidence.
Nice. Well, resilience obviously needed in tough moments. Can you take us through a couple of tough moments in your career, whether the army, whether in research, whether in teaching?
Yeah, there were a few in the army, but I guess going to Iraq was quite tough. I was really nervous about camel spiders. And if you look up camel spiders, so that was my biggest fear before I deployed, which is quite pathetic, really. But I ended up having the most incredible time out there because, again, it's just the army at its best. People were so kind, so brave, so loyal. It was really humbling and really inspiring. And yeah, the camel spiders turned out not to be a problem. So that was great. I guess you just normalize to the environment quickly, which I think is a real encouragement to young people and older people. So even if you are going into something that's tough, I think that you adapt to it very, very quickly. I certainly adapted to the dangers of being in Iraq much more quickly than I expected to. So that was really, good.
We'll come to the work you're doing in educational research around character, moral virtues, and leadership. There is no doubt, though, that a life focused on Olympic accolade, then followed up by a career in the army, and then a move into research has put you in good stead. I want to stick on the tough moments too, though. Perhaps later in your career in research, have you had any tough moments where you've worked hard on projects and haven't come out with the results you wanted, or any tough moments perhaps in your time at Wellington?
Oh yeah, definitely. So lucky because I started at Wellington with Anthony Selden, who's a real mentor, total inspiration, amazing. And he had the most extraordinarily high standards. So he's like, right, Katy, set up a Leadership Institute, needs to be the best in the world. And don't worry about time and resources. You don't need those. Just make sure it's the best, the best in the world, which was just awesome. And really, really challenging as well. But I think what was so nice about that, obviously I had to work incredibly hard and we're not the best in the world for sure. But what was really nice was that his message to me was that this is going to be tough, but I believe you can do it. And so although he held me to really, really high standards, it felt like it really came from a place of belief and care and probably even love for everybody at Wellington, which was amazing. But yeah, there certainly were times where things like conferences or the quality of courses really weren't world class. So yeah.
You are the forefront of research around reimagining what good educational leadership looks like with your work with
I'm not sure I'd say that.
Well, you wouldn't, but I'm allowed to.
So kind.
Looking ahead, you've obviously been, again, you benefited from great leadership, whether Anthony Selden or wider field. We are listened to by lots of teachers and head teachers here. Can you give me a sense of what you think good educational leadership should be like?
Oh, definitely. So this is a real area of excitement and perhaps slightly controversial, coming on to a potential other topic. So I absolutely believe that the foundations have to be love. And we really use that word unashamedly because the only way you can possibly provide the best possible education for our amazing young people and really help them go out into the world and flourish and make the world a better place is by loving everyone around you. And you've just got to care for them so deeply, as almost as if they're part of your family, probably to that extent. And once you get that depth of care, that depth of trust, that depth of belief, which I think Anthony really did exemplify, and many other people have, that's when you see absolutely extraordinary performance. And that's when you can really enable the teachers to enable the pupils to flourish. And when the students have great caring relationships with their teachers, they just do so much better on everything. And it feels like it's the right thing to do. You know, if we're privileged enough to be given a position of responsibility and leadership, then it feels like the right thing to do to really care for the people that you're lucky enough to be leading, whatever their age, whatever their experience, whatever their personality.
I couldn't agree more. And that theory runs true of so much of the work I've seen. In practical examples, can you give a few of how you might, advice you might give to those who are looking to develop, let's say, some of the work you're doing in their own settings?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm quite a bear of little brain. I like things really simple. And so I was super lucky to write a book with an amazing friend, Emmy Bidston. And we were desperately trying to boil all the research down and try and figure out what 3 things do you need to think about. And the first thing is to know people. And that takes serious listening. Like, you have got to listen as openly, as deeply, as kind of genuinely, as caringly as possible, because you've got to understand what people's values are, what their strengths are, what gets them up in the morning, what their hopes and dreams are, and really appreciate that that's going to change over time as well. So the first thing would be know your people. Then we'd say love them. You can only really give people the care that they want once you know them. So like, if I were to take someone I teach a bit of geography occasionally on a good day. So if I were to say, take a geography teacher who'd been teaching for 15 years, I'm like, right, here's a scheme of work, here are all the PowerPoints, do this. And autonomy and freedom and creativity were some of their values. That wouldn't be loving at all. That would be highly irritating. But equally, someone brand new into teaching, not very confident, might absolutely love all the resources and sit down after every lesson and see how things are going. So I think, know your people, love your people, and love them in the way that they want to be loved. So not in a patronizing way, but in a supportive way that still allows freedom. And then after that, you're in a position to inspire people. So know them, love them. And then once they really know you care and they really trust you, then you can start thinking about meaning and purpose and co-creating visions and strategies. But I think you need those initial knowing and loving building blocks.
Can I ask, I'm going to go off script a bit, but it's something that we not only support, we use all your research in the work we do around meaning and purpose and human flourishing and Aristotelian virtues of good habit. What do your critics lean on when they butt up against your research? What would they say on the flip side?
Yeah, definitely. They would say, you don't want to get too close to people. You've got to hold people to account. You've got to be like making sure that they're doing the work. Those kind of things. I think the main one I bump up against is accountability. And I think we're never saying, oh, just, let people do whatever they want to do. What we're saying is help them be the very, very best versions of themselves. And then, if things are going wrong, then because you've got a trusting, deep relationship, it's really easy to sort it out. So like someone might say to me, oh, one of your third form or year 9 was a bit fed up because they didn't understand what you were talking about when you were talking about migration. And because you've got a good relationship with your head of department, then that's totally fine. So we're not saying avoid tough conversations. We're not saying avoid accountability, which is what some people think. It's all a bit touchy-feely, woolly. But we're actually basing it on quite hard kind of neuroscience, as well as, like you say, millennia of philosophical deep thought, like back to Aristotle and many others as well.
And can I ask one final question? And I'm going to come to some unpopular opinions, perhaps, and some research around that. But you speak to the new generation, the upcoming generation of leaders in this country. For those who are, let's say, recruiting postgrads or undergrads, or who are looking at a new wave of leaders, what are they talking about? What do they care about? What are they going to pin their colours to when they get a job? What kind of leaders?
They're just amazing. Teenagers today, my gosh. I work with teenagers. If you're ever feeling blue about the world, just work with teenagers. They're so caring and they so want to make a contribution. They so want to make the world better. So we really see this in global social leaders. So we've got young people in like 105 countries, and the projects they're doing to make their communities better, all off their own back in their own time, would blow your mind. So I think they're a really, really caring generation, and I really think they want to make the world better. So let them do that.
Great. Recruitment by impact. How about that? You spend your life in books and research. What are some good recommendations, please? Podcasts, books, journals, anything for our listeners?
Oh, brilliant. Great question. So probably the book that's had the biggest impact on me is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. They're both these extraordinary stories of love conquering their time during the Holocaust in concentration camps, and how they were able to come out afterwards having witnessed the most unbelievable atrocities and still have loads of love to give people. Like the level of forgiveness of Corrie ten Boom, it would literally blow your mind. So I'll definitely go for those two in terms of love in action in really tricky circumstances. A couple of our friends run a brilliant podcast and they've been interviewing such interesting people called Flourish FM, and that's part of the Human Flourishing program at Harvard. And I'm really, really enjoying the science of well-being. So the Huberman Lab I found to be really, really interesting, and it's pointed me to a lot of kind of journal articles and things that I wouldn't necessarily have come across, and so that's been helpful as well. So yeah, definitely Flourish FM and the Huberman Lab.
Wonderful. We like John Beale and the Flourish FM too. We're big
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah, John and Nick, top men.
Exactly. So look, that's positive and full of love. Let's turn the page. Katy, some unpopular opinions perhaps around education. Let's start with currently, and then I'm going to look into the future a bit. But yeah, anything which you might think might rankle a few people.
Oh, that's a good question, actually. Yeah. I think there's an unnecessary divide between the kind of knowledge and skills. I think, knowledge, skills, character, they can all work together. You've got like intellectual virtues, performance virtues, moral virtues, civic virtues. I think education's kind of at its best when we bring all of them together. Like a really cool example of this is in a prep school I'm really lucky I get to do a little bit of work with. And they've got the humanities, for year 7 and 8. And so they give them a project on a really exciting, interesting topic, say like chocolate or something like that. And then that takes you into the slave trade. It takes you into the impact of kind of cocoa beans on climate change, fair trade, superbly interesting. And it's such a good example where it absolutely wouldn't work if the children didn't know anything. And they have to have a lot of skill to be able to do that. And you're developing their moral and civic virtues at the same time. So I think splitting, saying, education is only about knowledge or it's only about 21st century skills. I don't think we need to do that. I think, they're both completely intertwined and work together.
I agree. And do you think this approach to education will solve some of the issues that we will see, whether in school avoidance or teacher recruitment? Is this a kind of a remedy for future problems, do you think, that we'll encounter in education?
So tough, isn't it? It's so tough to know definitely the answer. I mean, from flourishing, that really the main thing is relationships. So I think probably, and meaning and purpose, but predominantly relationships. So I'm wondering whether actually the most important solution is give teachers more time to build relationships with the students and give the students more opportunities to build relationships with each other and really show them and teach them what it means to have a really loving, caring relationship. So I think that would probably be where I started if I had the chance. So time for relationships, but giving them meaningful things to do is also really important.
It's lovely. It's just so important. It's such a good message. And it ties nicely full circle back to your story at the beginning about the time you were given in the army. I think there's such a consistent theme in your life and career and research, which is pretty inspiring. I'm going to finish, Katy, this podcast with a question we always ask our guests, which is for a piece of advice you have for someone developing a career in your sector. What would you say to those people?
I think definitely put relationships first. Anytime you take the time to listen to another teacher, to a middle leader, and super importantly to pupils, that is just the best use of your time. And so I'd say always try and prioritize people. And, if you do need to do slightly less paperwork, then that's what I'd say. Yeah. Put those people first. Listen.
Wonderful. Well, people over paperwork is a lovely way to finish. Katy, thank you very much for joining Heads and Tails.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Walter. It's been a complete delight.